Welcome to the Event Connection, where we explore the stories, trends, and unforgettable moments that are shaping our industry. We'll uncover the human side of events and celebrate the power of engagement and connection, all while having a little fun. This podcast is produced by PC Nametag.
Welcome back to another episode of the Event Connection. Today we're going to talk all about sustainable event planning, and this is super important. But some people might not know how to necessarily get started, or they might have some roadblocks that they need to navigate. And I have the best person possible to answer those questions for us today. Her name is Missy Nergard, and she is the Chief Sustainability Officer at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, let's dive right in. I'm super excited to talk about this subject, and I know it can be a little bit overwhelming for some planners, but I think there's some really easy ways to make those small swaps or make those small decisions that can have a really big impact on your event and help it be more sustainable and eco-friendly. So in your opinion, how do you describe what a eco-friendly event is?
Eco-friendly, I think is slightly different than a sustainable event, because I think when you talk about the ecology of things, we really focus on the environmental impacts of an event. I know from a sustainability perspective, some of the events take months and months and months to plan. So I think there's also a sustaining your team as you're going through all of that and figuring out how to do it. But as an attendee to an event, I absolutely look at some of the stereotypical things. What are the energy usage, which is something as an event attendee you don't notice. You're not going to see the bills on the back end. I think the most visible things for attendees is actually the amount of waste an event could create. But there are a lot of other environmental impacts around an event from that impact. If we think about, or this is the way I think about it, am I being a good neighbor if I'm hosting an event? Thinking about scale of a backyard neighborhood kind of event to something that's multi-day international. There's a lot of different considerations there, but you can think local around any of those.
And that's huge. I know if you're having a multi-day conference, that could be creating tons and tons, literally, of waste. So if are those small things that we can do to swap in and make it a little bit more sustainable, it's definitely something that we need to do.
Yes, yeah. And I think for some of those multi-day where you're bringing in a lot of different venues, right, looking at a venue that perhaps has those choices, those systems in place already, that takes that off of your checklist to be able to do that. So really partnering with other sustainable venues is really helpful.
I can tell you're very interested in sustainability, and I'm just curious, how did you get into your role as a Chief Sustainability Officer?
It's interesting, as I've been in higher education for several years, and sustainability as a profession didn't exist when I came out of college. So it was something that I actually saw evolving. So I wrote a business plan to create an office of sustainability at the university I was working at, and the vice president jumped right on it. And we started out as one of the inaugural sustainability offices in higher education. And I see parallels in private sector as well. It's just I see more sustainability professionals in a space that there never was one. So.
That's so exciting. I would love to see the sustainable events industry continue to grow. Yes. So I'm sure you're doing a lot of learning and research in your position. And I'm wondering if you've come into any, concerns about event sustainability or any big challenges or misconceptions around it that specifically event planners might run into.
I definitely see that, and this is a misconception, I think, across the sectors, regardless of event planning or something else, that there's an assumed financial cost to it. I find that to be a myth that we need to bust. I also think that there's a very narrow focus on the back end production, where some of those choices that we make at the front end can be the most impactful. So really, you're planning an event and you're thinking of all these minutia, to your point, and thinking of the front end of a product. And that's where I think companies like PC Nametag are really helpful, because you just make these choices available. And I don't have to think twice about what is the follow-up impact or the upstream impact of whatever it is that I'm procuring.
Yeah, definitely. I know with PC name tag, we did a survey a few years back and we just asked, what do you think, the price point of a sustainable badge is versus a more traditional badge? And people actually had the perception that sustainable badges cost more when they don't. We specifically price them so that they're the same, so that that switch is really easy. Why not go with the biodegradable badge or the recyclable badge?
Yeah.
So we try to make that really easy. Or even if you just think about your lanyards, maybe you can go with an organic cotton lanyard, something that's a little bit more eco conscious. So at least from PC name tag, that's kind of how we focus on helping planners make sustainability the easiest choice.
And that is super helpful all across the board, because I don't wanna think about it, and I don't wanna have to do the research. I just wanna be like same with swag. We talked about some of the things that you can swap in and out. I think some of the giveaways that we get, those can be, one, they can be hyper localized, which really, from an economic development perspective, makes your site selection really distinctive, right? And for Wisconsin, we may think cheeses or cranberries or something that's particular to our locality. But regardless of where you're hosting your event, there are local treasures that can be sustainable and can be a boon for your local economy.
I think there's a lot of ways that we can make our events stand out through sustainability. So let's talk a little bit about some of our favorite ways to make events more sustainable. So I thought maybe we could take turns talking about our favorite ways. I guess I can start off. I actually learned this from a conference called the ISMB conference. And something really cool that they did that I had never seen before is if there's leftover signage, it's the big boards that you might see when you come in and say registration this way. They actually donated those signage pieces to a local theater group so that they could repurpose it into theater sets, and I had never heard of that before, but that's just an example of something that you might have normally tossed. Maybe that's something that could have a new life with a theater group, for example.
That is incredibly innovative. I'd seen something similar where, for instance, at the university, we have events and we have a lot of flags when different things go on around campus to celebrate 175th anniversary. And they'll take the flags and turn them into reusable totes that we
Really?
can and then hand out at conferences. So it's a way to continue our marketing and branding and to reuse things. So I think being really creative like that is an amazing opportunity, and that also helps connect you to your community. You see where the needs are and the opportunities.
Or maybe just leaving the year off of your signage. That's super, super easy. You can reuse it next year. So it can be as easy as just changing up the design of what you're printing.
Excellent, excellent point.
What's a realistic way that you like to make events more sustainable?
One of the things, at least at the university and in the central Madison, the community that we're really concerned about is food. So we do a lot of food advertising at the end of uh, an event. We have a free food alert, for instance. So we just say, hey, if you're hosting an event, sign up for this. At the end of your event, we'll send out a notice to students who swarm.
Oh, I definitely can see them coming for
Yeah, and then capture things. But we also do things like repackage food, freeze it, and make it available in a shared kitchen for those, maybe suffering from food insecurity or experiencing that at the moment. So it's a really lovely way to reduce any of the really awesome organics from being put into landfill, but it also serves a really important social need.
I actually went to a conference where they had box lunches, so they weren't, touched at all, but any box lunches that weren't eaten were actually donated to a local organization that helps people with food insecurities. So it was nice to see those box lunches not being tossed in the trash and instead going to someone who can use it.
Um, and then I think, and what this is something I thought that you had done really well too, was being aware of what resources are in the community. So, for instance, one of the things we talk about is doing biodegradable plastics. But if you don't have a commercial composter available in your community, they'll still end up in a landfill. So that situational awareness about being able to take advantage of what your community offers is also important.
Another really cool thing that I saw an event planner do was she put together a sustainability pledge for
Mm.
attendees. So she gave a whole list of things that you could do to be more eco-conscious while you're at the conference or traveling to the conference. So some examples are I promise that I'm going to have my plane ticket on my phone versus printing it. Or I promise to turn off all the lights in my hotel room. I promise to bring a water bottle so that I'm not using plastic while I'm at the event. So there's a lot of different things that you can do with it. But I thought you could kind of incentivize your attendees by either having maybe a prize if they participate in the pledge, or if you wanted to continue being more eco-conscious with it. That specific conference that I saw do that, they actually planted a tree for every person who took the eco pledge. So I thought that was a very cool way that they continued giving back through the event and, making that meaningful contribution to the environment.
Yeah, and something physical, right, tangible, if you will.
Right,
Uh,
exactly. Maybe some people don't want to take home, another piece of plastic that they get from the event, but they know that, having a tree planted on my behalf is more meaningful to them.
yeah, I've seen where uh, access to apps, for instance, you go to conference and they'll be like, plug your Merlin app and see which birds are here locally and really try to
That's
connect
fun.
you to the environment that you're in. Obviously, not the best if you're in a conference room in a hotel, but some of our more outdoors focused events, really looking at what the flora and fauna are around you.
Awesome. I have some for fun questions that our listeners submitted if you would be open to doing some fast, fun questions
I
about
am.
sustainability. All right, perfect. Our first question was, what's the easiest eco swap you can make while planning an event?
I definitely think the would be to go virtual. But,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, right, that's the easiest one, but other than that, it's really looking at the swag, I think, is some of the things you can swap out and really thinking about, long-term use of something and think through your own experience about, "What am I gonna do with those sunglasses that I got at graduation?" Or right? We just so really thinking through what's useful for attendees.
I know I personally really like when I go to a conference and the plates that the meals are served on are actual real plates that are washable. It just feels like a little bit more higher class to me. So I personally like using reusable dishware. So that's one of my favorites. And then another thing that we can think about are centerpieces. I've actually seen some events do, let's say, like succulents on in the middle of the table that attendees can take home at the end of the event, or I've seen some planners do fresh herbs or, in season flowers on the tables. And again, having, attendees take that home. So just making those small eco swaps is something to think about.
And I think it's more interesting.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's like I've never seen that
Yeah,
before.
yeah. So I think, being creative and innovative in that regard is just it also can make your event more distinctive.
And you definitely read my mind for our next listener question. It is, what is your favorite eco conscious freebie or giveaway at events?
I will speak from my experience, at least for our students. They they love the we get these stainless steel spork things with the knife and spoon and they love those kind of tools and stickers. So I think one, it's a little bit generational. So if I'm doing a K through 12 event and definitely giving out stickers, and then as students matriculate and they get to college, they still love stickers. So for us, that's an easy thing. And then for some of our more mature generations, I still do notebooks, some of those things. And then if it's we're really focusing on hyper local, we'll do native seed packets or
Ooh, I love that
that.
idea. That's awesome. Yeah, and if you're going to have notebooks that you give away, let's say, maybe it could be upcycled paper.
Yes,
So
always.
again, just those little swaps. I really like freebies, especially if I'm going to an expo hall and I'm visiting booths and, it's a lot of people wanna give away those freebies. If we can have something that I can eat, I really like. Like, I specifically remember I went to this one conference recently, and this one booth was giving away cookies. And I was like, "Alright, this is perfect. It can be my afternoon snack or my after meal dessert." And that's not something that I have to take home and have sit in a junk drawer
Mm.
at my house at the end of the day. So, I would say I love desserts. I also like locally made things. So, like, let's say you're having a conference, you might want to give away little jars of honey or little jars of jam, and then you're supporting a local business who makes those things.
Yeah. I will say too, I've seen more and more as I've gone out, little hotel gifts if it's an overnight conference. It's a little welcoming bags, and they are things like little clementine oranges or local nuts and furrows, right? Something that you get munchy in your hotel in the middle of the night, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna eat that bag of nuts.
Perfect.
Right.
Exactly. And you can, it doubles as a little snack or, again, not something that you have to take home and put in your luggage, especially if people are traveling. You got to think about can people make it home with these swag items or are they going to throw it away in their hotel room before they leave?
Or are they just gonna eat it like all that chocolate is?
Exactly. Calories don't count when you're at conferences. That's what I always say. All right, last question that I have from our listeners is do you think that sustainability and philanthropy or social responsibility, however you'd like to call it, go together?
I think they are inextricable in that regard for many reasons. Most importantly, people, right? You're going to a conference or an event for a particular outcome. So there's got to be some existential value to that may outweigh the environmental impact of you getting there. So I think if an event planner can find ways to amplify that, right? Like planting a tree locally in the community or taking some time to do a nature walk or highlighting local small businesses. There's definitely a tie to that, whether we want to call it philanthropy or just goodwill, being a good neighbor. Those are, I think they do more to make your event memorable and you could feel good about it.
I would definitely agree with you on that. And I think you can even incorporate event sustainability into the agenda, even if it's outside conference hours. Like maybe if attendees are coming in the day before the conference, maybe you do go out and plant some trees in the community or have a food drive and be sorting cans and looking at expiration dates. So I think there's a way that we can incorporate philanthropy and sustainability and make it be a part of that attendee engagement strategy.
That's genius.
So we've talked about some very cool sustainability initiatives today, but sometimes it's easier said than done. Maybe you need to get stakeholders on board to, give you the funding to do some of these sustainability initiatives that you have in your mind. So, how would you say that we could get stakeholders on board with these sustainability initiatives as part of your event strategy?
I I don't know that I have trouble getting them on board. I think it is more of an expectation that I have from at least my stakeholders, and maybe that's my particular sector. Uh, but I get more comments when I haven't done something sustainable than I do.
Maybe that's a good thing. You're
Yeah,
shifting the
I
mindset
think
on
it's.
it.
I also I see more of a push, especially from international, where sustainability, some of those metrics are becoming compliance and regulatory, right? So um, I have to report on what are the impacts of this event, and especially for some of our international sponsors, they need to be able to report that up. So I have to make it as sustainable as possible, and that also helps us draw because we're a host, right?
Yeah.
So it also helps us draw in more events.
I love that. And I like that you mentioned, it's up to you to be reporting on the sustainability of the event. And I think that's a great segue into our next question. I'd love to learn more about some of the resources that you might know of, or checklists, or other tools that event planners can use to host more sustainable events.
Yeah. So we hosted, for instance, Coldplay. The university hosted Coldplay, the
Well,
music thing several years
yep.
ago, and they had a checklist. These are our expectations. So having a client come in with a checklist is very important. But with if a client comes in and like, I don't know how to make this sustainable, there are lots of online checklists available out there. There is also an international standard, the ISO, the International Standard Organizations, has a sustainable event ISO. So I think that's a wonderful resource as well, especially if you're working with international clients that have to do some regulatory reporting efforts. Otherwise, I've had great success working with our Chamber of Commerce.
Great
It's
resource.
a wonderful resource. And then there are companies like you that actually make resources available as well. It's such a simple Google search anymore. There's no reason to not do it.
Right, exactly. And I like, you're kind of thinking outside the box. Like, who can I partner with? What tools can I use? And it doesn't necessarily have to cost a lot of money. If you can just get scrappy with what you're already currently doing, it can make a huge impact with just those small changes.
Yeah, and for if we're, for instance, we're going to be going to a venue, right? I'm looking for some of those attributes that the building itself already has those systems in place to force decisions. in that space, or not force decisions, limit. People don't have to make a choice, right? This is already done for me. I only have this one option.
And I've definitely heard if you're going to work with a LEED certified venue, let's say, they already have a lot of the built-in features that you might be looking for within the venue. So that's just an easy win in just choosing where you host your event.
Yep. Think of like a site selection and economic development. You're looking for those amazing features.
Awesome. I would love to do some shameless shout outs here. I'd love to learn more about Badger Talks and why they're so awesome. Tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about that.
Thank you. So the University of Wisconsin-Madison hosts a series, a speaker series, and they're both in person throughout the state, and they're available online. And they will cover topics from tick-borne diseases impacting your dog to what do I do with this with my dairy cattle and shade, right? To shade create more milk. So it's an amazing resource for the people of Wisconsin to leverage the incredible amount of knowledge and research that happens at the state flagship university, and just it is the Wisconsin idea in action. So I highly encourage, if there's a Badger Talk at your local library, or you're interested in the history of the Edmund Fitzgerald sinking and the weather impacts, there's a great online program from Steve Ackerman on them. So anyway, regardless of what your interests, it happens at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and we want to make sure it's publicly available for you.
I love learning. I love growing. And it sounds like you can learn a lot of very interesting and cool things through Badger Talks. So definitely would recommend checking that out. Well, thank you so much for meeting with me today. I know sustainability can feel a little scary, but as we mentioned, there's a lot of really easy things that we can do that make a really big impact. And I like that you mentioned maybe we should be making sustainability the expectation going forward. It's not just a nice to have, it's a must. So I like that direction that we're moving.
Me too.
Well, thank you so much, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you so much. Take care, you guys.